The morning sun barely touched the street corner when 8-year-old Lily and her grandmother arrived with their flower baskets. This wasn't how most kids her age spent their mornings, but Lily didn't complain. She knew her grandmother's hands ached from arthritis, and every flower they sold meant dinner on the table that night. "Remember, sweetheart," her grandmother would say each morning, adjusting Lily's faded jacket, "we smile at everyone. A kind word sells more flowers than a pretty face." Lily nodded, though she didn't really need the reminder anymore. She'd been doing this for 2 years now, ever since her parents left to find work in another city and never came back. Her grandmother never talked about it, and Lily learned not to ask. Some questions hurt too much to answer. Their spot was right across from the grand concert hall, a building that looked like something from a fairy tale with its tall columns and golden doors. Rich people went there. People in fancy cars and expensive clothes. People who didn't notice a small girl selling roses for $2 each. But Lily noticed them. More importantly, she noticed the sounds. Every afternoon around 3 o'clock, music would drift out from the concert hall. Sometimes it was violin, sometimes it was singing, but most days it was piano. And oh, how Lily loved the piano sounds. They made her chest feel tight and her eyes water, though she didn't know why. The notes seemed to tell stories without words, painting pictures in her mind of places she'd never been and feelings she couldn't quite name. Her grandmother caught her standing still one day, eyes closed, swaying slightly to a melody floating across the street. "You like that music, don't you, little one?" Lily opened her eyes, embarrassed to be caught daydreaming when she should be working. "Sorry, Grandma. I'll focus." "No, no." Her grandmother's weathered hand touched her cheek gently. "It's good to love beautiful things. Never apologize for that." From that day on, her grandmother made sure they took their lunch break when the music played. They'd sit on the curb, eating their simple sandwiches, and Lily would close her eyes and listen. Her fingers would move on her lap, pressing invisible keys, following patterns she couldn't see but somehow understood. "What are you doing with your hands?" her grandmother asked one day. Lily looked down, surprised to find her fingers dancing. "I don't know. I can feel where the music is going." "My hands want to follow it," her grandmother smiled sadly. Music lessons cost money they didn't have. A piano cost more than they'd earn in a lifetime of selling flowers. But she didn't say these things out loud. Why crush a child's dreams before life did it for her? Weeks turned into months, and Lily's fascination only grew stronger. She started recognizing patterns in the music. When the notes went up, she knew her fingers should move to the right. When they went down, they moved left. Fast music made her fingers dance quickly. Slow music made them glide like water. One rainy Tuesday changed everything. The afternoon rehearsal was in full swing, but the summer heat made the concert hall stuffy. Someone propped open the side door to let in fresh air. Lily saw it immediately. Her grandmother was busy arranging flowers, making them look fresh even though some were starting to wilt. "Grandma, I need to use the restroom," Lily said quickly. "There's one at the gas station." "Honey, I know, but my stomach hurts. I need to go now." Her grandmother's concern overrode her suspicion. "All right, but come right back." Lily nodded and hurried away, but she didn't head toward the gas station. She crept toward that open door like a moth drawn to flame. Her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. She peeked through the gap. Inside was the most beautiful room she'd ever seen. High ceilings with painted clouds, rows of red velvet seats. And there on the stage stood a massive black piano that gleamed under the lights like something magical. A woman sat at the piano, her fingers flying across the keys. Lily pressed herself against the wall, hidden in the shadows, and watched. She studied everything. The way the woman sat straight but relaxed. How her fingers curved like she was holding invisible eggs. The way her foot pressed pedals at the bottom. The slight movement of her shoulders as she played. The music wrapped around Lily like a warm blanket. It was the same piece she'd heard yesterday, the one that made her think of rain falling on leaves. But now she could see how it was made. Each finger had a job. Each movement created sound. It wasn't magic at all. It was patterns. Beautiful, intricate patterns. She watched for 20 minutes before fear of getting caught drove her back to the flower stand. Her grandmother gave her a knowing look but said nothing. Grandmothers always know more than they let on. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay on the thin mattress in their tiny apartment, her fingers moving against the sheet, recreating what she'd seen. Left hand played low notes, steady like a heartbeat. Right hand played the melody on top, dancing and singing. Together they made something bigger than either part alone. The next day the door was closed. And the day after that. But Lily didn't mind anymore. She'd seen enough. When the music played now, she didn't just hear it. She understood it. Her fingers knew which keys the pianist was pressing even though she couldn't see them. Her grandmother noticed the change. "You're different lately." "Happy different. I saw inside the concert hall," Lily admitted. "I watched someone play piano. Did you now?" Her grandmother's eyes twinkled. "And what did you learn?" "That it's not impossible. That it's just patterns, and I'm good at patterns. Remember how I learned my times tables faster than anyone in class? It's like that, but with sounds instead of numbers." Her grandmother pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "You've got your mother's determination." She was the same way. Set her mind to something and wouldn't let go. They didn't talk about her mother often. It hurt too much. But Lily held on to those words. Determination. Maybe that's all she needed. Over the following weeks, Lily's invisible piano playing became more confident. She didn't just move her fingers anymore. She could hear the notes in her head, could feel the rhythm in her chest. When she hummed along, her grandmother smiled. Other vendors on the street started noticing too. "That's a pretty tune," said the old man who sold newspapers. "Where'd you learn it?" "Just listened and learned." Lily shrugged. "Smart kid," he said, tipping his cap. But not everyone was kind. Some people walked past their flower stand like they were invisible. Some wrinkled their noses at Lily's worn clothes. Once, a woman in a fur coat actually stepped around her like she might catch poverty by getting too close. Lily learned to smile anyway. Learned to say "fresh flowers, ma'am," even when people ignored her. Learned that being poor made you disappear in some people's eyes. But when the concert hall music played, she wasn't invisible. She wasn't the poor flower girl. She was someone who understood beauty, who could feel the mathematics of melody, who knew that every note had a purpose and place. She didn't know it yet, but that understanding would soon change everything. Not just for her, but for everyone who thought they knew what a street kid could or couldn't do. The universe has a funny way of creating opportunities for those who dare to dream, even when dreaming seems foolish. And Lily's opportunity was coming soon, arriving in the form of a charity event that would prove to be anything but charitable at first. The first sign that something big was happening came on a Monday morning. Workers arrived at the concert hall with ladders and boxes, more people than Lily had ever seen there before. She watched them carry in what looked like decorations, fancy tablecloths, and crates of wine glasses that sparkled in the sunlight. "What's going on over there?" she asked her grandmother. "Some kind of fancy party, I imagine. The rich folks love their parties." Her grandmother's voice wasn't bitter, just matter of fact. She'd lived long enough to know that some people had everything while others had nothing, and getting angry about it wouldn't change anything. By Tuesday, a huge banner appeared across the concert hall's entrance. Even from across the street, Lily could read the gold lettering, "Morrison Foundation Charity Gala, supporting underprivileged children." The irony wasn't lost on the street vendors. Old Mr. Chen, who sold roasted nuts from his cart, laughed when he saw it. A party for poor kids that costs $500 a ticket. Makes perfect sense. Now, Lily's grandmother said gently. "They do raise money for good causes. Just because we can't afford to go doesn't mean it's not helping someone." But Lily couldn't stop staring at those words. Underprivileged children. That meant kids like her, didn't it? Kids who wore the same shoes until their toes poked through. Kids who did homework by candlelight when the electricity got shut off. Kids who knew the price of every item at the dollar store by heart. The preparations continued all week. Lily watched them hang crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than her grandmother's entire apartment. They rolled out a red carpet that looked soft enough to sleep on. Fresh flowers arrived in massive arrangements, the kind that made their little buckets of roses look pitiful in comparison. "Those flowers must cost a fortune," her grandmother muttered, looking at their own wilting inventory. "We're selling the same roses for $2, and they're probably paying $50 per stem over there." On Friday afternoon, a delivery truck brought the most beautiful thing Lily had ever seen. Workers carefully wheeled out a piano, but not like the one inside. This one was pure white, decorated with gold trim, and it sparkled like it had been dipped in stardust. They positioned it right in the entrance lobby where everyone arriving would see it. Lily couldn't take her eyes off it. Her fingers twitched against the flower stem she was holding. "It's just for show, sweetheart," her grandmother said softly, noticing her stare. "Probably doesn't even work properly. Just there to look pretty." But Lily wondered, what would it feel like to touch those keys? To press down and hear what sound came out? She'd been imagining it for months now, moving her fingers on invisible keys, hearing music in her head. But imagination and reality were different things. Saturday arrived, the day of the gala. Lily and her grandmother positioned themselves early, hoping to catch people in a generous mood. Her grandmother had even managed to get some nicer flowers, spending money they really couldn't spare. "If there's ever a day people might overpay for roses, it's today," she explained to Lily. "Sometimes you have to spend money to make money." As evening approached, the transformation was complete. The concert hall looked like something from a movie. Lights twinkled everywhere. Music played softly from hidden speakers. Men in uniforms opened car doors for guests who stepped out in gowns that probably cost more than a year's rent. Lily watched woman after woman glide past in dresses that shimmered and sparkled. Their jewelry caught the light, sending rainbow reflections dancing across the sidewalk. The men wore suits so perfectly tailored they looked like they'd been painted on. Everyone smelled expensive, like flowers and spices Lily couldn't name. "Excuse me, ma'am, would you like some fresh roses?" Lily's grandmother called out hopefully. Most people walked past without even looking. A few glanced over with vague smiles but kept moving. One man actually pulled his wife closer as if poverty might be contagious, but one woman stopped. She was older, maybe 60, wearing a deep purple dress and a kind smile. "How much for a dozen?" $20, ma'am," Lily's grandmother said quickly. "Here's 40. Keep the change. You two must be freezing out here." The woman handed over the money before her grandmother could even wrap the flowers properly. "Thank you so much, ma'am. God bless you," her grandmother called after her. "See?" she said to Lily, tucking the money safely into her pocket. "There are still good people in the world." The crowd kept coming. Luxury cars lined up like a parade. Lily counted 3 limousines, something she'd only seen on TV before. Cameras flashed as people posed on the red carpet. Everyone looked so confident, so comfortable in their expensive clothes and perfect makeup. Lily looked down at her own jacket, the one with patches on the elbows where her grandmother had sewn up the holes. Her shoes were scuffed and too small, pinching her toes. She suddenly felt very small and very invisible. "Come on," her grandmother said as the last guests entered. "Let's see if anyone leaving the restaurant next door wants flowers." But Lily's attention was caught by the concert hall entrance. Through the glass doors she could see that white and gold piano, sitting there like a throne. The lobby was mostly empty now, everyone having moved into the main ballroom. "Grandma, I need to use the bathroom again." Her grandmother gave her a suspicious look. "The gas station is right there." "Please, Grandma. My stomach really hurts. Maybe I ate something bad." The concern in her grandmother's eyes won over her doubt. "All right, but be quick. And be careful." Lily nodded and hurried away. But she didn't head to the gas station. Her feet carried her toward those glass doors like they had a mind of their own. Her heart hammered in her chest. This was wrong. She knew it was wrong. She didn't belong here. But that piano called to her like a siren song. A catering worker stood by the door, smoking a cigarette and looking bored. He was young, maybe 19, with tired eyes that said he'd rather be anywhere else. When he saw Lily approaching, he stubbed out his cigarette. "Hey kid, you can't go in there." "Please," Lily said, her voice small. "I just want to look at the piano. Just for 1 minute. I won't touch anything, I promise." Something in her voice must have gotten to him. Maybe he had a little sister at home. Maybe he was just tired of rich people treating him like furniture. Whatever the reason, he glanced around and then sighed. 1 minute. And if anyone asks, you snuck past me. Got it? Got it. Thank you." She slipped through the door before he could change his mind. The lobby felt like stepping into a dream. Everything was so clean, so bright. The air smelled like expensive perfume and fresh flowers. Her worn shoes squeaked on the marble floor. And there it was, the piano. Up close, it was even more magnificent. The white finish was so glossy she could see her reflection. The gold trim wasn't painted on, but seemed to be actual gold leaf. The keys looked like they'd never been touched, perfectly clean and aligned. Lily's hands trembled as she reached out. She didn't sit on the bench. That felt like too much. but she let her fingers hover over the keys, remembering everything she'd learned from watching through that door, remembering the patterns, the movements, the way each finger had its own job. She was so lost in the moment that she didn't hear the footsteps behind her. Didn't notice the woman in the diamond necklace who'd come back to the lobby to take a phone call. Didn't see the woman's eyes widen in shock and disgust. "Security!" The woman's shrill voice shattered the silence. "There's a street child touching the piano." Lily jumped back like she'd been burned. Her heart sank to her feet as she saw faces turning toward her. Important faces, angry faces. She'd made a terrible mistake. The catering worker who'd let her in had vanished, probably not wanting to get fired. Other security guards were already moving toward her. But worse than that were the looks on the guests' faces as they began filing out of the ballroom to see what the commotion was about. She saw disgust, contempt, amusement, but not one single face showed kindness. Lily wanted to run, but her feet felt glued to the floor. She wanted to explain, to apologize, but her throat was too tight to speak. This was about to get much, much worse. And standing in that crowd of wealthy guests was someone who would make sure everyone knew exactly how unwelcome a poor flower girl was in their world. The security guards were closing in, but they stopped when a loud voice cut through the lobby. "Wait, everyone, wait!" A tall man in an expensive suit pushed through the growing crowd. He was maybe 50 years old, with gray hair slicked back and a watch that probably cost more than a car. His face wore an expression that was somehow both amused and disgusted at the same time. "Well, well, well," he said, looking Lily up and down like she was something he'd stepped in on the sidewalk. "What do we have here?" Lily tried to speak, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to what? Sneak into a private event? Touch property that doesn't belong to you?" He circled around her slowly, making sure everyone in the growing crowd could see. "Do you know how much that piano costs, little girl?" Lily shook her head, tears already building behind her eyes. "More than you'll see in your entire lifetime," he said with a cruel smile. "One scratch from your dirty hands could cost thousands to repair." "My hands aren't dirty," Lily said quietly, showing him her palms. She'd washed them that morning, scrubbing extra hard like she always did. Being poor didn't mean being dirty, her grandmother always said. The man laughed and others in the crowd joined in. "Oh, she's got spirit. How adorable. Tell me, child, what were you planning to do? Steal the piano? Hide it under your little jacket?" "No, sir. I just wanted to see it up close. I wanted to—" She hesitated, knowing how ridiculous it would sound. "I wanted to play it." The lobby erupted in laughter. It wasn't kind laughter. It was the kind that made Lily's cheeks burn with shame. "You? Play this piano?" The man's voice dripped with mockery. "That's a joke. That's the funniest thing I've heard all year." More people filed out from the ballroom now, drawn by the commotion. Women in glittering gowns whispered behind their hands. Men in tuxedos shook their heads, some looking annoyed that their evening was being interrupted by such nonsense. A woman emerged from the crowd, and somehow Lily knew immediately that she was important. She moved like someone who expected everyone to get out of her way, and they did. Her black dress was simple but elegant, and she wore her dark hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to pull at her face. "What's going on here, Richard?" she asked the man in the expensive suit. "Just a little street urchin who thinks she can play piano, Catherine. Says she wants to touch our display piece." The woman's eyes were cold as they swept over Lily. "I'm the director of the Morrison Foundation," she said, her voice sharp and precise. "This event is raising money to help children like you. Children who have nothing. And this is how you repay that generosity? By sneaking in and disrupting everything?" "I didn't mean to disrupt anything," Lily said, her voice stronger now despite her fear. "I just love piano music. I listen to it every day from across the street. I watch and I learn and I—" "You watch and you learn?" Another woman stepped forward, this one wearing so many diamonds she seemed to sparkle. "Darling, I've been playing piano for 30 years. I started lessons when I was 4. I practice 2 hours every single day. And you think you can learn by watching through a window? Piano takes dedication." Another guest chimed in, an older man with a gray beard. "Years of expensive lessons. Proper instruction. Discipline. It's not something a child off the street can just pick up." Richard, the man in the expensive suit, turned to address the crowd like he was giving a speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here tonight to help unfortunate children. But there's a difference between helping and enabling foolish fantasies. This child needs to learn her place in the world. My place. Lily felt something hot and angry rising in her chest, pushing past the fear. What's my place? To be invisible? To be someone you ignore on the street? Your place, Richard said slowly, like talking to someone stupid, is to be grateful for whatever charity people like us choose to give you. Not to sneak into our events and pretend you're something you're not. The crowd murmured in agreement. Lily looked around at all those faces, trying to find one person who might understand. But she saw only judgment. Pity at best, contempt at worst. I know how to play, she said, even though she knew no one would believe her. I've been learning for months. Every day I listen to the music from the concert hall. I memorize the patterns. I practice with my hands. I dream about it at night. Dreams, Catherine said dismissively. Dreams don't make you a pianist. Training does. Money does. Resources you clearly don't have. Then let her try. A voice called from the back of the crowd. It was the woman in purple who'd bought flowers from them earlier. If she's so confident, let her make a fool of herself. Then maybe she'll learn not to reach above her station. The crowd seemed to like this idea. Lily could see it in their faces. They wanted entertainment. They wanted to see her fail. It would make a funny story to tell at their next party about the presumptuous street kid who thought she could play piano. Richard's smile grew wider. You know what? That's a brilliant idea. Let's let her embarrass herself. It'll be a lesson she won't forget. Catherine looked less certain. Richard, the piano is valuable. If she damages it, she won't have time to damage it. She'll hit a few random keys, realize she has no idea what she's doing, and we'll escort her out. Come on, Catherine, where's your sense of humor? Catherine pursed her lips but nodded. Fine, but make it quick. We have a schedule to keep. The crowd parted, creating a path to the piano. Lily stood frozen. This wasn't how she'd imagined this moment. She'd dreamed of playing piano for the first time, but in her dreams she'd been alone, or maybe with her grandmother who would smile and clap no matter how many mistakes she made. She hadn't imagined a crowd of wealthy strangers waiting for her to fail, hadn't imagined their mocking faces and cruel laughter. Part of her wanted to run, to push through the crowd and disappear into the night, but another part, a stronger part, refused to back down. These people had already decided who she was. A nobody, a street kid, someone who didn't matter. What did she have to lose? Okay, Lily said quietly. I'll play. The crowd's laughter swelled. Richard clapped his hands together in delight. Wonderful. This should be highly entertaining. Lily walked toward the piano, each step feeling like it took forever. The crowd followed, forming a semicircle around the instrument. Some people had their phones out, probably planning to record her failure and share it with their friends. She reached the piano bench and paused. Her grandmother had always told her to stand tall, even when the world tried to make her small. So Lily straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. Any requests? Richard asked sarcastically. Maybe Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star? That seems about your level. More laughter. Lily ignored it. She sat down on the bench, adjusting her position the way she'd seen the pianists do. Hands curved, back straight, feet flat on the floor. She was too short to reach the pedals properly, but that was okay. Her hands hovered over the keys, and for a moment, doubt crashed over her. What if she was wrong? What if all those months of watching and listening hadn't actually taught her anything? What if she pressed the keys and only chaos came out? But then she remembered the music. The beautiful, heartbreaking melodies that had carried her through long days of selling flowers in the rain. The notes that had lived in her head for so long they felt like part of her soul. She closed her eyes and let her fingers find their places on the keys. The room held its breath, waiting for her to fail. Lily took one deep breath, thought of her grandmother waiting outside, thought of every person who'd ever looked through her like she didn't exist. And then she began to play. The first note rang out clear and pure, cutting through the lobby like a beam of light through darkness. It was a single key, pressed with such confidence that it made several people in the crowd stop their whispering. Then came the second note. And the third. Lily's fingers began to move across the keys, and the melody that emerged wasn't Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. It was Chopin. The same nocturne she'd heard floating across the street dozens of times. The one that had lived in her head for months. The one she'd practiced on invisible keys until her fingers knew every movement by heart. The laughter died. Phones that had been raised to record her failure slowly lowered. The smirks on people's faces melted into expressions of confusion, then surprise, then something close to shock. Richard's smile vanished completely. Catherine's mouth fell open. Lily wasn't just hitting keys randomly. She was playing music. Real music. Her left hand moved steadily, providing the foundation, the heartbeat of the piece. Her right hand danced above it, telling the story, each note flowing into the next like water over stones. She wasn't perfect. Her fingering wasn't technically correct. Her posture would have made a proper piano teacher cringe, but there was something in her playing that no amount of expensive lessons could teach. She played with her whole heart, with every emotion she'd been holding inside for years. The sadness of missing her parents, the loneliness of being invisible on the street, the beauty of dreams that seemed impossible, the stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, the world could be different than what everyone told her it had to be. Her fingers moved faster now, into the more complex section of the piece. This was the part where the pianist she'd watched had seemed to fly, where the music built and built until it felt like your chest might burst. Lily had replayed this section in her mind 100 times, and now her hands knew exactly what to do. Someone in the crowd gasped. A woman's hand flew to her mouth. The gray-bearded man who'd lectured about discipline and years of training stood frozen, his face pale. Lily didn't notice. She was somewhere else now, lost in the music the way she'd been lost in it 100 times before while sitting on the curb outside. The concert hall lobby disappeared. The crowd disappeared. There was only the piano and the melody and the feeling of finally touching real keys instead of invisible ones. The music softened, becoming gentle and sweet, like a lullaby. This was Lily's favorite part. It reminded her of when she was very small before her parents left, when her mother would sing to her at bedtime. She played it the way she remembered her mother's voice, soft and full of love. Then came the ending. The notes climbed higher and higher like climbing stairs to somewhere beautiful, before finally settling into a gentle resolution that felt like coming home. Lily's hands lifted from the keys. The final note hung in the air, fading slowly into silence. For a moment nobody moved, nobody breathed. The lobby was so quiet you could hear the traffic outside, the distant clinking of glasses from the ballroom. Lily opened her eyes and turned to look at the crowd. Their faces were completely different now. The mockery was gone. The amusement was gone. Some people looked stunned. Others looked ashamed. A few had tears running down their cheeks. The woman in purple, the one who'd suggested letting Lily play, was crying openly, not even trying to hide it. "My God," she whispered. "That was beautiful." Catherine stood like a statue, her mouth still hanging open. When she finally found her voice, it came out shaky. How did you—" "I told you," Lily said simply. "I listened. I watched. I learned." Richard, the man who'd been so cruel, so certain of his superiority, looked like he'd been slapped. His face had gone red, then pale, then red again. "That's not possible. You can't learn piano that way. You can't just—" "But she did," the gray-bearded man interrupted, his voice filled with wonder. "We all just heard it. That wasn't random. That wasn't luck. That child understands music." A younger man pushed through the crowd. He wore thick glasses and had the slightly messy look of someone who cared more about art than appearances. "I'm a piano instructor at the conservatory," he said, looking directly at Lily. "I've been teaching for 15 years and I've never seen anything like this. Your technique needs work, yes, but your understanding of the music, your feeling for it, that's something I can't teach. That's something you either have or you don't." More people started speaking at once. A woman in a green dress said she'd been playing piano since childhood and had never played with such emotion. Another man said his daughter had been taking lessons for 5 years and couldn't play half as well. Catherine suddenly seemed to remember who she was. She stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice was different, softer, almost gentle. "Child, I owe you an apology. I judged you without giving you a chance. I saw your clothes, your situation, and I assumed—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "You assumed I was nobody," Lily said quietly. "Just another poor kid who should be grateful for whatever scraps fall from the table." Catherine flinched like Lily had hit her. "Yes, that's exactly what I did. And I was wrong. So terribly wrong." Richard still stood to the side, his face a mask of confusion and shame. He opened his mouth several times, but no words came out. Finally he managed, "I don't understand. How is this possible? Maybe, said the woman in purple, walking up to place a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. We've all been measuring possibility by the wrong standards. We think talent requires money, that dreams require privilege. But maybe all they really require is determination and heart. The conservatory instructor knelt down to Lily's eye level. What's your name, sweetheart? Lily? Lily, would you be willing to play for me again? At the conservatory? I'd like to properly assess your abilities, and I'd like to discuss the possibility of helping you develop your gift properly. Before Lily could answer, Catherine spoke up quickly. The Morrison Foundation will cover any costs. Lessons, instruments, whatever she needs. That's what we're here for, after all, to help talented children reach their potential. How convenient, the woman in purple said dryly. 5 minutes ago, you were ready to throw her out into the street. Catherine had the grace to look ashamed. You're right, I was. But people can change, can't they? We can learn from our mistakes. The crowd began to break apart, people clustering in small groups, talking in animated voices. Lily heard snatches of conversation floating past. Did you see her hands? I can't believe we almost missed that. I feel terrible about laughing. But through all the noise and conversation, Lily noticed one person pushing through the crowd toward her. Her grandmother, looking terrified and confused, having been brought in by the security guards who'd finally found her outside. Lily, baby, are you okay? They said you were in trouble, that you'd done something wrong. Grandma! Lily jumped off the piano bench and ran into her grandmother's arms. Grandma, I played the piano. I really played it, and they heard me, and they know now. They know I'm not nothing. Her grandmother held her tight, looking around at all the fancy people staring at them. What happened here? The woman in purple stepped forward, offering her hand to Lily's grandmother. Your granddaughter is extraordinary. She just played a complex piano piece that most people couldn't master without years of formal training. She taught herself by listening and watching. She's been doing that for months, her grandmother said softly, pride filling her voice, moving her fingers, humming the melodies. I knew she had something special, but I never imagined. None of us imagined, Catherine said, joining them. And that's our failure, not hers. Ma'am, I'd like to discuss how the Morrison Foundation can support your granddaughter's education. She has a remarkable gift, and it would be a crime to let it go to waste. The conservatory instructor handed Lily's grandmother his card. Please call me. I've taught hundreds of students, but I've never encountered raw talent like this. With proper training, she could be extraordinary. Lily's grandmother clutched the card, tears streaming down her weathered face. All this time, I thought it was just a dream. Just something nice for her to think about while we sold flowers. I never thought. Dreams are funny things, the woman in purple said softly. Sometimes they're exactly as impossible as they seem. But sometimes they're just waiting for someone brave enough to reach for them. Richard still stood at the edge of the crowd, watching everything unfold. Finally, he approached slowly, like a man walking to his own execution. I was cruel, he said, simply looking at Lily. I mocked you. I tried to humiliate you. I wanted to put you in what I thought was your place. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Lily studied his face. The apology seemed genuine, but the hurt he'd caused was still fresh. You laughed at me, she said. You made everyone laugh at me. I did, and I have no excuse for it. I can't take it back, but I can try to do better. He pulled out his wallet and handed a business card to Lily's grandmother. I own several commercial properties. You and your granddaughter will no longer need to sell flowers on the street. I'll make sure you have proper housing and a steady income. It's the least I can do. The crowd had grown quiet again, watching this moment unfold. Some people looked uncomfortable, confronted with their own behavior. Others looked thoughtful, like they were reevaluating things they'd always taken for granted. Lily's grandmother held her granddaughter close, overwhelmed by everything happening. I don't know what to say. This morning we were selling flowers. Tonight everything changes, Catherine said firmly. That's how it works sometimes. One moment can alter the course of a life. We almost missed this moment. We almost dismissed this child without giving her a chance. But we won't make that mistake again. The conservatory instructor smiled at Lily. So will you come play for me at the school? I promise no one will mock you there. Lily looked up at her grandmother, who nodded through her tears. Then she looked back at the piano, the beautiful white and gold piano that had started all of this. Yes, she said simply, I'd like that very much. 3 months passed before Lily truly believed her life had changed. The first few weeks felt like a dream she might wake up from at any moment. She kept expecting someone to knock on the door of their new apartment and tell them it was all a mistake, that they had to go back to the street corner and sell flowers. But no one came. The apartment was real. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a working stove, heat that actually worked in winter. Her grandmother cried the first night they slept there, and Lily wasn't sure if it was from happiness or disbelief or both. The conservatory was intimidating at first. The building was all marble and high ceilings, with practice rooms lining long hallways where music poured out from behind closed doors. Everyone seemed to know exactly what they were doing, walking with the confidence of people who'd never questioned whether they belonged. Lily's first real lesson with Professor Chen, the gray-bearded man from the gala, was humbling in ways she hadn't expected. He sat beside her at the piano and gently corrected her hand position, her posture, her fingering. "You've taught yourself remarkably well," he said kindly, "but now we need to rebuild some habits before they become permanent. Think of it like this. You've been speaking a language fluently but with an accent. We're going to smooth out that accent while keeping the voice that makes you special." It was harder than Lily imagined. Some days she felt like she was getting worse instead of better. Her hands wanted to move the old way, the way she'd taught herself. Learning proper technique felt awkward and wrong at first. "I don't sound like me anymore," she complained one day after a particularly frustrating lesson. Professor Chen smiled. "You're in that difficult middle place. You're not who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. It's uncomfortable. But I promise on the other side of this discomfort is something wonderful." He was right. Slowly, week by week, the new techniques started feeling natural. Her hands grew stronger, her understanding deepened, and the music she could create became richer, more nuanced, more controlled. But not everyone at the conservatory was welcoming. Some of the other students whispered when she walked by. She heard the words charity case more than once. A girl named Victoria, whose parents were both professional musicians, made it her personal mission to remind Lily that she didn't really belong. "My parents paid full tuition," Victoria said loudly one day in the hallway, making sure Lily could hear. "Some of us earned our spot here through years of proper training, not through some viral video moment." The video. That was another thing Lily was still getting used to. Someone at the gala had recorded her playing, and the video had spread across the internet like wildfire. Millions of views. News stories. Interview requests that Catherine from the Morrison Foundation helped screen. 8-year-old homeless girl stuns wealthy crowd with piano performance, the headlines read. Lily hated being called homeless, even though technically it was true. She'd had a home, just not a very good one. Her grandmother worried about all the attention. "I don't want people treating you like some kind of circus act," she said one evening while they ate dinner at their small kitchen table. "You're not a performing monkey. You're a child with a gift." "I know, Grandma." Professor Chen says the same thing. He says the performance part will come later after I've built a proper foundation. But the opportunities kept coming. A local television station wanted to do a feature story. A community center asked if she'd play at their holiday concert. Richard, the man who'd mocked her so cruelly at the gala, had indeed followed through on his promises and now checked in regularly to see if they needed anything. "I'm trying to be better," he told Lily's grandmother during one of his visits. "I spent my whole life judging people by what they had instead of who they were. Your granddaughter taught me that lesson in 5 minutes of piano playing. I can't undo my past behavior, but I can try to do better going forward." The woman in purple, whose name turned out to be Helen, became an unexpected friend. She started volunteering at the conservatory, helping manage the scholarship program that the Morrison Foundation had expanded after Lily's story went public. "You started something," Helen told Lily one afternoon. "Applications for music scholarships have tripled. Kids from all over the city are getting chances they never would have had before. One moment of courage changed more than just your life." 6 months after the gala, Professor Chen entered Lily into a regional youth piano competition. She was terrified. This wouldn't be like playing for a shocked crowd at a charity event. These would be judges who knew music inside and out and competitors who'd been training their whole lives. "I'm not ready," Lily protested. "Those other kids have been doing this for years. And you have something they don't," Professor Chen said firmly. "You have the hunger. You know what it's like to want something so badly it keeps you awake at night. That matters more than you think." Competition day arrived with gray skies and nervous butterflies in Lily's stomach. Her grandmother sat in the audience, wearing the new dress Helen had insisted on buying her. Richard was there too, and Catherine, and even some of the other vendors from their old street corner. Backstage, Lily watched the other competitors warm up. They all looked so polished, so professional. Their clothes were perfect. Their hair was perfect. They belonged in a way she still wasn't sure she did. Victoria was competing too, and she made sure to brush past Lily with a smirk. "Good luck," she said in a tone that meant the opposite. "Try not to embarrass yourself." But when Lily's name was called and she walked onto the stage, something shifted. She saw her grandmother in the third row, tears already forming in her eyes. She saw Professor Chen nodding encouragingly. She saw all the people who'd believed in her when she'd barely believed in herself. She sat at the piano, a beautiful black grand that reminded her of the one she'd watched through the concert hall door all those months ago. She adjusted her position, checked her posture, took one deep breath, and then she played. She'd chosen a different piece this time, something Professor Chen had helped her learn. It was technically demanding, full of runs and jumps and dynamics that required control and precision. But it also had heart, and that's what Lily poured into it. She didn't play perfectly. She knew that even as her fingers moved across the keys. There was a small stumble in the third section, a moment where her left hand and right hand briefly lost sync. But she recovered quickly, and more importantly, she never stopped feeling the music. When she finished, the applause was warm but not overwhelming. This was a competition after all. People were polite. She walked off stage not knowing how she'd done, but knowing she'd given everything she had. The results came 2 hours later. Lily placed third. Not first, not second, but third out of 47 competitors. Victoria, who'd been so confident, placed seventh. Professor Chen was beaming. "Do you understand what you just did? You've been training for 6 months. 6 months. Most of those kids have been training for 6 or 8 years, and you placed third." Her grandmother couldn't stop hugging her. "I'm so proud of you. So proud." But the real surprise came a week later. The first place winner, a talented boy named David who'd been genuinely kind to Lily backstage, sent her a message through Professor Chen. "Your performance was my favorite," it read. "You played like the music mattered, like it meant something more than just notes on a page. Don't lose that." Time continued to pass. Lily kept learning, kept growing, kept pushing herself. There were hard days when her fingers wouldn't cooperate, when the music seemed impossible, when she wondered if she'd ever be as good as the kids who'd started so much earlier. But there were also magical days. Days when everything clicked. Days when the piano felt like an extension of her own voice. Days when she forgot about technique and competition and just played for the pure joy of it. 2 years after that night at the gala, Lily performed as the youngest soloist ever featured with the city's youth orchestra. The concert hall was packed. News cameras lined the back wall. But as she walked onto the stage in her new dress, the one Helen had insisted on buying for the occasion, Lily only had eyes for the front row. Her grandmother sat there, healthy and happy, no longer exhausted from standing on street corners all day. Next to her sat Professor Chen, who'd become like a grandfather to Lily. Helen was there, beaming with pride. Even Richard had come, looking genuinely happy for her success. The orchestra began the introduction, and Lily's hands found the keys. This time there was no nervousness. This time there was only the music and the knowledge that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. When the final note faded and the crowd rose to their feet, Lily stood and took her bow. The applause washed over her like a wave, but she barely heard it. She was thinking about a little girl selling flowers on a street corner, pressing invisible keys while real music played across the street. That little girl had dared to dream, had dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be more than the world told her she was allowed to be. And she had been right. After the concert, a young girl approached Lily shyly. She was maybe 7 years old, wearing patched clothes that Lily recognized all too well. "That was beautiful," the girl whispered. "I want to play piano too, but my mama says we can't afford lessons." Lily knelt down to the girl's level, taking her small hand. "What's your name?" "Amy." "Well, Amy, I want you to listen to me very carefully. If you love music, if you feel it in your heart, then you find a way. You watch, you listen, you practice even when you don't have an instrument. You dream bigger than anyone thinks you should, and maybe if you're brave enough, you don't let anyone tell you no. The girl's eyes went wide with hope. Lily pulled out Professor Chen's business card. He'd given her several for exactly this purpose. Give this to your mama. Tell her Lily sent you. There are scholarships now. Programs for kids just like us. Your dream doesn't have to stay a dream. As Lily watched the girl run back to her mother, clutching the card like it was made of gold, she felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe, or purpose. She'd been given a gift. Not just the ability to play piano, but the opportunity to show others that their circumstances didn't have to define their future. That talent could bloom anywhere, even on the corner of 5th and Main, even in the hands of a girl selling flowers. The concert hall where she'd once been mocked and dismissed was now a place where she belonged. But more importantly, it was a place where other kids like Amy might belong too, if they were just given the chance. And that, Lily thought as her grandmother's arms wrapped around her in a proud embrace, was the real music. Not just the notes on a page, but the melody of possibility that played in every heart brave enough to listen.